Hello friends, welcome back to the Craft Castle. My name is Ashley, and if you're new here on my channel, please don't judge me too hard because I have a secret to tell you, and I swear I have big brains up in here. But in May of 2024, I got a new to me vehicle. With that being said, this new to me vehicle is a Ford Escape in a dark charcoal color. Problem with this is that I didn't realize that a lot of people in my town own the same exact car, make, model, and color. If you're watching this and you're also in my town owning a Ford Escape in a dark charcoal color, guaranteed I probably tried to break into your car thinking it was mine. It has happened so often that I've had tried to figure out a way to make this car scream, "Ashley, this is your car." I figured it out. No, it's not a bumper sticker. It is a blinged out license plate. Doesn't this just scream me? Hello, matches my shirt. This right here, I'm gonna put on the back of my car because oftentimes I'm loading groceries in the back of it. And now, whenever I try to go into someone else's Ford Escape, if they don't have this, I know it's not my car. So if you are like me and you also are having a problem breaking into other people's cars, or if you're just looking for something to do as a rainy day craft or a snowed in craft, then you're gonna wanna watch this video because I'm gonna show you how to do this, and it's really easy and really simple. Are you ready to get crafted? Let's go.
If you know anything about me, you do know that I love to be super organized, and conveniently, all of my blinging supplies fit into this one plastic drawer that I keep in my craft room. So anytime I want to bling anything, all I have to do is just slide my drawer out and look, all of my blinging supplies are right here. Okay, the very first supply you're going to need is a metal license plate cover. Now, I purchased these off of Amazon, and I can tell you right now, the 2-pack of license plates are cheaper than the single pack. Make that make sense. But in my state, you only need one license plate for the back. So I guess I have an extra license plate because my car doesn't even have a spot for the front to put a license plate on. Anyways, the other thing that you are going to need is a silicone wax tip pen. This is going to come in handy to pick up all the small little rhinestones. I am using the Crystal Katana made by, I think her name is Crystal Ninja. Anyways, she was the one who birthed this particular pen. Every other pen that you see out there that's a wax tip pen, just know they have copycatted her. Fun fact. And then you are going to need some rhinestone sorting trays, is what they're called. I'll have all the supplies linked in the description of this video. So if you forget what it is that I'm using, just look in the description of this video. Then what you're going to need, if you're following the exact steps as what I'm doing, which I strongly suggest you do, by the way, you are going to need like a silicone bowl and what is that? Like a tongue press thing. The reason why I'm going to be using silicone is because it's reusable. I am going to be using epoxy, and most of the time when people do epoxy crafts, they use, a plastic throwaway cup or a paper cup or whatever. And I love to limit my waste. I know I'm pretty wasteful as a crafter, but I do try to not be as wasteful, or try and figure out ways that I can not be wasteful. This is one of them. Then the next thing that you're going to want to grab is some 2-part epoxy. This epoxy that I'm using, you're going to see that I have no label on it. That's because I peel it off. I will link the exact epoxy that I use in the description of this video. But essentially what it is it's a non-toxic 2-part epoxy. Keyword non-toxic. Most of the epoxy that you're using or that other crafters use is very toxic and harmful to yourself. I love to take care of my body. I only have one body, you know what I mean? So anyways, I like to use non-toxic glues. This epoxy, it's pretty fast drying as well. It cures within, or I guess it dries within an hour, and then it does a full cure within 24 hours. And then you're going to need some bling. Now, most of the bling that I have is going to be from Auntie Tay. Sadly, she no longer sells anything that is a supply, which is a bummer because I absolutely loved her bling mixes that she created. The other ones that I get is from, I think her name's Crystal Ninja. But anyways, it's the Kiara Sky rhinestones. Those are really high quality. They're on the pricier side, but they're high quality. I have a couple baggies of like green and yellow ones that my stepmom had purchased to bling some shoes for me. I think she got them off of like AliExpress or Temu or something like that. They are the cheapest quality ever. I do not suggest them at all. But if you can find some high quality rhinestones, I really wish that Auntie Tay still sold her rhinestones because they're not only high quality, but they were very affordable. The only other rhinestones I've ever used is the one from Crystal Ninja. It's the Kira Sky is the brand. And those are high quality, but really pricey. So just keep that in mind. Okay. Then also the other supply that you're going to need just to protect your work area is going to be some parchment paper. If you have a silicone mat, I wish I had one because then I could be more eco-friendly. I would have that, but I don't. So I am just going to use some parchment paper just to cover up my kitchen counter. I am crafting in my kitchen, by the way. Now, the hardest part about this project is going to be picking out the rhinestone color that you want to use. Or at least that was the hardest part for me. So I have a dark gray car and I love the color pink. So I'm going to be using a mix that has the pink and gray mixed into it. I also chose gray because my license plate, the metal portion of it is gray. And so because I'm not going to make my frame like pink, the entire thing pink, then I do need to mix up some gray. Otherwise, that just kind of looks really weird. Okay, then what you need to do is take that little silicone bowl thing. Make sure it's nice and clean. There's nothing dried out in there. And what you want to do is, if you're using the same exact epoxy as me, is you want to do a 1-to-1 ratio. Now, the little silicone cups that I have measurements on the inside of it. Just like a little mini measuring cup. You won't be able to see it in the camera, but just know that the ones that I have the measurements on the inside printed. So you put in part 1. It doesn't really matter what part you put in. Just put in one of the parts. Make it, let's say 25 milliliters. Then you're going to put in the other part or the other color. And you're going to put in, if you did 25 milliliters for the first one, you're going to do 25 for the second one. Now, you don't have to be an exact scientist here. The cool thing about this super tight epoxy is that you don't have to be 100% accurate. You do have to be kind of accurate. Don't put in like 25 milliliters and then 40 and think it's going to work. But if you're at like a 25 milliliter, 30 milliliter, and you're just a little bit off in your measurements, that's totally okay. When you're done, what you want to do is take your little silicone tongue press thingamajig and you want to stir up your epoxy. Make sure not to get this on your hands or anything like that. You probably should be using gloves. Clearly, I don't live that life. But what you want to do is just stir it up. You want to make sure it's nice and stirred up. What that's doing is activating the epoxy. So now it's starting to cure. So what you're doing is what I told you earlier is that this has like a 1-hour window. It's going to be a little bit longer because it's freezing in my house, but you want to, when you start mixing it, you are now starting the curing process. So you do have to move a little quickly. Luckily, this project does not take a long time. You just have to have all your supplies out and ready to go because it does start to cure when you start to stir it. That being said, you don't want to like overly stir this. You don't want like a ton of air bubbles just because it is a pain in the butt to get rid of the air bubbles. So just like a nice little stirring thing. Once you're done doing that, all you need to do is take out one of your license plates if you're only doing one. If you're doing 2, then you need to put both of them, but just open up one of them and you're going to take out one license plate, set the other one to the side, and let's get to blinging. If you are a blinging artist and you're watching this, you are about ready to cringe, but I realized that I actually did not have the next supply needed, and now I have to use an actual cotton Q-tip. I don't suggest this. What I suggest doing is either grabbing a silicone brush or a disposable makeup sponge thing like for eyeshadow. The reason why I don't suggest a cotton swab like what I'm about ready to use is because when you dip it into the epoxy and you put it on there, your cotton on the Q-tip will start to leave fibers everywhere. And you don't want that because now your bling project is going to look kind of hairy. So I have to try and pull out all the cotton fibers as I try and do the epoxy. I don't suggest doing this. And I'm sorry for you bling artists that are professionals because you're probably cringing. So say as I do, not say, do as I say, not as I do. Is that what I'm supposed to say? Anyways, so after you get the disposable silicone brush or makeup brush, what you need to do is just add a little bit of epoxy onto your disposable thing, and you're going to put a very thin layer of epoxy. You don't want it to be too thick because it'll take forever to dry, and you don't want the epoxy to start, spilling out over all over the place and making a huge mess. You just need a very thin coat. So you just want to add in a little bit of a thin coat. When you first stir up the epoxy, it's going to be very watery and thin. As the epoxy dries, it will start to become a thicker, more taffy-like consistency. So if you're somebody that likes that, just wait a little bit. But the downfall to that is by the time you're getting to the end of your license plate, it's probably going to be fully cured. So you kind of, I would just say I just stir it up and then I just do a very thin coat. You can see that my coat, I'm like really spreading out the epoxy. So that's what you want to do. A very thin coat. Don't do it very thick. After you get done doing your very thin coat of epoxy, I'm only working in small sections. So I'm just going to do a little bit, making sure that it's nice and thinned out. But once you're done, then you need to take the wax tip. Now, what I suggest you doing is warming up the wax tip in your fingers and then kind of, is it maneuvering, or you want to like make it into a fine tip? It's almost like when it's cold, it's really hard, but when you warm it up, it's almost like a Play-Doh like consistency or a clay consistency. So you can mold it into the shape that you want. So I'm going to mold it into a like nicer little point. Then all you do is with your rhinestones and your little rhinestone sorting tray is you just pick up a rhinestone with a silicone tip, place it into your epoxy. The epoxy is going to like suck it up like a suction cup, like into the epoxy. And then when you pull the silicone tip away, your epoxy or your rhinestone is stuck to your epoxy. Does that make sense? So just pick up a rhinestone with the silicone thing, plop it onto your epoxy. The epoxy is going to like suction cup it together. And then if you need to, this particular tool that I have on the other side has this like needle nose thing. You can use that side to move your rhinestones into the position that you want to. So you never have to touch the epoxy with your hands, which is great. You really don't want to have the epoxy on your hands. It is non-toxic, but it can be an irritant to your skin. I don't want that for you. Don't want it for me either. So just use the little pin. Essentially, what we are doing, and if you're not a bling professional, what you're doing right now is called the scatter method, which means that there's no pattern at all. You're just going to randomly place all of these little rhinestones onto the metal license plate. That's it. Like, this project is that simple. Now, the rest of this project is easy breezy. You're going to be doing the same exact thing, and it's going to take you, at least it took me, about an hour and a half to complete this project. The one thing that I do want to talk to you about is the reason why I'm using epoxy versus any other glue. If you've watched any other rhinestone videos that I have posted in the past, you will know that I use a totally different glue generally. But the reason why I'm using epoxy for this particular project is because it is going outside. Most glues will yellow over time because of UV light, and because my car is outside getting hit by the sun all the time, it will start to become yellow. But if you're using this particular epoxy that I have, it does not yellow at all over time, which is wonderful. The other thing too is with epoxy, it can withstand high heat. This particular epoxy, I believe it can withstand up to 550 degrees Fahrenheit, which is essentially like sticking this thing into an oven. I don't think it gets that hot in South Carolina. That's where I'm located. So 550 degrees will pretty much just essentially say this is going to last forever, which it should, as long as, I don't bang it against anything. Hope and pray that never happens. But okay. And then the last and final thing I want to talk about is because I did mention it, was your choice of rhinestones. So Generally, if you've watched any of my other rhinestone videos, the one thing that I say is like your base, what you're putting your rhinestones on. If it's blue, then you want to choose blue rhinestones. And the reason for that is no matter how tight you make your rhinestones, you will always be able to see the backer. So if you're using blue as your backer, then you want to use blue rhinestones. Now I am using silver. So I want to use a silver rhinestone. Now, I don't want it to be all silver, so that's why I chose a mix that has silver in it. So that way it doesn't look like it's so out of place. I can tell you right now, and I'm not going to try and show you because then I would ruin something, but if you were to do a silver background with, let's say, black as your rhinestone, you're going to see the silver in the background and it's going to look not cute. Trust me on that. So you always want to match your backer with your rhinestone. And if you're using mixes like me, you're going to be fine and it's going to turn out looking amazing. When you get done blinging the license plate cover, I also forgot to mention that they have these two little caps. That's what you're going to put over the top of your screws when you screw it back into your car. Take those out. If you're doing one license plate, you just need two of the caps, and you want to bling out the tops of the caps too. Don't forget about those. It's very important because we don't want naked screws on top of our cute license plate cover we just made.
Okay, this license plate cover has been drying for a little less than 24 hours. Now, the epoxy that I did use, they say to let it cure for like 7 days, but because I did like a really thin coat on it, it's pretty much completely dry. Now, I'm going to wait a couple more days before I put it on the back of my vehicle just to make sure that the epoxy is pretty stuck on there and glued on there, but I don't want to ruin my nails, but I'm going to try. I'm pushing on the rhinestones, trying to lift them up. Less than 24 hours, y'all. And look, there's not any rhinestones coming up, and I've even dented my finger for how hard I've tried. So this stuff right here is definitely stuck on there and won't lose any type of rhinestones. If you were wanting to use the epoxy to rhinestone a tumbler, this epoxy is dishwasher safe as well. So once it's fully cured and does the whole curing time thing, you can put your tumbler inside the dishwasher and your rhinestones will stay intact. Now, I'm not going to try it with this one because it hasn't been curing for that long, but just know that they do say it is dishwasher safe. That being said, do you love my plate cover? I sure hope you do, because this right here is my favorite and it just screams, Ashley, this is your car. Sure hope I inspired you to create, friends, and I'll see you later.